Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is episode 13. Very, very happy with the way things are going so far. The support has been awesome, very awesome, enough where I can justify doing this in the middle of a workday for the second week in a row and third time overall. So I'm super happy about that. Um, and I am very excited to talk with my guest today. I was able to get a arc of her new book, which was me fighting with 4,000 other people, apparently. And luckily, it didn't come to blows because I'm pretty sure I would have lost. But I devoured it. I read it, I think, in maybe 3 or 4 days. It was fantastic. I was able to get my sister-in-law a copy, so both of us at my parents' house one day kind of just hustled into the corner of the room and talked about it. I loved it, she loved it, and everyone else who was reading it so far also loves it. So I am bringing to the stage now Miss R.A. Sandpiper.
Hello. I think I need
Hello.
to like hire you to do speeches every time I like enter any kind of rooms because that was nice. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad that works out well. I always say it makes it very easy for me when I actually read what is sent or what I want to, and it is great. It makes it very easy. I don't have to lie. That's why there's no stuttering. Like I didn't plan
Yeah,
that. It was just like, oh, that's how I
nice.
really feel. So it works out very well.
Either that or you're a really good liar. One of the two.
I'm not. I have a terrible poker face. I'd be able to get called out quickly. Um,
Okay, nice. I'll make a note of that.
yeah, just take my word for it. It was great. But
Okay.
so the book, which doesn't even come out for another 2 weeks, I think, or a week and a half at this point, 9 days, right?
Correct. Yes, nine
Um,
days. Yeah.
can you just give a little backstory on very basic? We're not going to do any spoilers, anything like that, but just a little backstory on it.
Sure. I'm still really terrible at pitching my book. I do have to do it on TikTok quite often, but with TikTok it's not live, so I can just redo it every time I flub it. But it is a book which is it's fantasy. Obviously, I feel like everyone that comes on this writes fantasy books, but it's a fantasy book. It's more epic than the trilogy that I have that's coming out right now. It's called To Touch of Silent Fury, and it's a dual POV, first person, epic. I'd say it's epic, but it's got romance, but the romance isn't primary plot, and it follows the Tanny, who is an outcast amongst outcasts. She is the only woman in a brotherhood who everyone else thinks that brotherhood's creepy anyway. And she lives on an island waiting to get her fated path, which will dictate whether or not her abilities are able to grow, and whether or not she becomes broken or whether she completes her fate and is able to increase her magic. And that's kind of the first chapter and where it all starts.
Which is a great jump off point because that was very basic and clear and really sets the stage nicely. I'm going to just share the cover as well because I thought the cover was fantastic. Um,
Yeah, it's really different from my other covers. I really like this cover. But I think with this one, I tried to do more of like a Mistborn Sanderson-esque style cover of there's also Trudy Canavan, who's another person who has similar ones to this. I wanted it to like blend in more with trad, whereas I felt like my previous covers were good, but maybe more like indie vibes, where I thought this one, like if it was on a cover, if it was on a shelf, it could blend in more with trad. So that was the vibe. That was good.
which worked out well because that's like a movie poster. Like I would get that blown up and framed on the wall. That looks really good. Um, the first thing I wanted to ask again because Tanny is like you said the only woman at the Brotherhood on the island.
Yeah.
Um, what made you have them moon touched? Like with that as the element, was there any kind of influence like for that?
Interesting that you asked about Moon Touched as like being influenced by something, because I had someone message me on Instagram and be like, "Do you play Skyrim? Because like there's something in Skyrim that like really reminds me of these characters." And I was like, "I have played Skyrim, but I have not played like enough to get to the point that I even realized that was a thing." But I think it's like a trope in fantasy. I've seen it in other fantasy series, and like that there's often a race or a group of people that all have white hair. So I think there's probably so many different things I could draw from, like the witches, for example, are often like will have like white hair, and there's a lot of like pop culture references for that. But it's not supposed to be directly influenced by any of those. But I'm sure all of them did probably play a small part. I don't really know. I feel like the moon touched aspect of the world building was one of the later parts that I
Hmm.
came up with, because I knew I wanted her to be in a weird society. I went from the position of wanting to gender flip the Bene Gesserit from Dune. If you've read Dune, where they've got like a sisterhood of people that are weaved into a lot of fates of a lot of different cultures. I thought it'd be fun to flip that round and then have her be the only woman, similarly to what's his name, Paul being the sort of the Kwisatz Haderach, or however you're supposed to say it. He was like the chosen one amongst women. Thought it'd be fun to have like a chosen one amongst men. So that's sort of, I guess, the Bene Gesserit, but like that doesn't explain the white hair thing. That's just fun.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting that that was an influence on you. That's very cool. I didn't kind of put that together, but now looking at it, it's like, oh yeah, that really is kind of an interesting idea. Um,
Yeah.
the other question I had right off the bat was, this was, you know, kind of marketed to me as like a romantasy type thing, and
Yeah.
I'm not against it. I'm just not as familiar with the genre.
Yeah.
I've read like a couple of things and it's been great, but this was very slow burn romantasy, I would say, and I thought that that alone was very well done. But the key difference here, which I think is going to turn people on a lot more than what is kind of pushed everywhere else, is the world building that you put into it, because the romance doesn't even start for a little bit. Like, you kind of see the threads of what's starting and where it's going to end up going, but there's not really a push for the in that plot line until a decent way into the story. Was that kind of what you
Yeah.
set out to do?
No, it's never what I set out to do. I did the same thing with my original trilogy. I keep like making this mistake. It's actually a thing of like, I set out to write a romantasy and then I end up writing something that's like 80% fantasy and 20% romance. With my trilogy, it's like the first book is honestly like 0.1% romance. But I think I start out thinking, okay, this would be a cool idea for an enemies to lovers or like that kind of premise. And then that's not, when I'm writing it, that's not what I want to focus on, or I don't want it to ever come across as feeling inauthentic. And somehow, if I like want to make it feel authentic, then I have to make the worlds feel lived in. I have to make the characters make decisions at paces that are correct for them and for the like way that I've built them, which means it ends up being way more slow burn and it ends up being far less romantic, because I'm like, well, actually these guys are going through like a lot of like turmoil and stress and trauma right now. So I don't want to make them have sex. I was going to use the F word and I was like, I don't know whether I should do that on a live. But so it felt like I keep getting to a point of like, oh, I really love romance and it will always be an aspect of what I write, but I never want it to feel forced. So then it always ends up being like breadcrumbs of romance. But there we are.
Which I thought was extraordinarily well done. And like I said,
Thank
my
you.
sister-in-law, I made sure to get her an early copy, so she read it as well. This question was from her, but it was something I noticed along the way as well. But
Yeah.
she said, I enjoyed that her backstory is of a scholar. Like, she's going there to
Yeah.
become part of this brotherhood and, learn sisterhood for her and everything. But what was the reasoning behind doing that instead of what one usually sees in romantasy? And the example is, she's a girl, but is randomly good at knife fighting or is perfectly skilled at one thing. Whereas Tani
Yeah.
in this started very basic and had to learn everything along the way. So what was the
Yeah.
reason?
Why that choice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I feel like I've already done stabby, angry heroine, and I've just written that for 3 books. So Suri, who's the main character of my Amify trilogy, she is similar to what you would expect from, I guess, a more traditional romantic heroine, in that she's extremely angry to a fault. Maybe that's maybe where she actually divulges from a classic romantic heroine, because um, she's not so willing to help everyone as a lot of them are, but she is still stabby and she is still like very good with like her knives and she can kill people like well, and she already knows how to do that from the start. And I think it was partly I'd seen the trend of the stabby heroines, and I'd also just seen a lot of people in the last year or two since I released that speaking on threads about kind of how tired they found that. So I came from it almost from like a marketing or like other perspective of, I think this will be maybe more interesting and more unique if the character is softer in certain ways. Not to say that she's a very resilient and like hardworking and focused, driven person, but she's just not maybe physically tough. So it was partly I thought people would enjoy it and maybe find similarities in themselves, and a lot of readers are people that see themselves as like academia, scholarly. So I thought I'm making a reader main character for readers. But also just along the way, I started to really like that dynamic, because I realized that I could then have their enemies to lovers dynamic have this element of mutual respect for each other's intellect. And I liked that as a concept, and it just sort of grew from there, and I just committed to it more and more.
Which again I think was very well done in this, where I think the strongest aspect of this book was the characters, because all of them came off, especially with the dual POVs, but it never felt like, yeah, here we go again. Like this is kind of a retread of something I read before. So in, like you said, keeping tabs on the way that social media is on threads and all that type of stuff, I think was a very smart decision to look at, kind of what people are feeling and what aren't, because this is a slow burn fantasy like very well done story. But I feel like you as a writer took the character work to another level and the world building, and that's really where this is going to be separate from some things that might be a little more basic. I like this a lot, like I said, and I'm looking at a lot of the people on Goodreads, a lot of the other stuff, the blogs. I saw Esme posted her review the other day and
really
loved
nice.
it. Yeah, I mean, I love her as a reviewer anyway. Like I followed her before I started looking at anything. So to see kind of, she spoke much more eloquent than I ever could in the reviews. But
and me, honestly.
It seems like, what you set out to do is, kind of exactly what is happening. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Again,
thank you so much for all of the compliments. Like before you move on to ask me a question, I'm like, thank you.
I'm sharing this as well because this is wild.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy actually. I keep thinking I'm gonna start getting a flurry of 1 stars, and it hasn't happened yet. I know it will drop. I'm not delusional. I'm not completely crazy. I'm aware that like there is a certain level to which I have given people ARC copies. A lot of people ARC copies. Some people this is their first ARC. Some people are experienced ARC readers. But I think there is a level to which people don't want to sort of burn a bridge and want to maybe slightly inflate a review. So I still think this is very good, and I still think it's like indicative that people really like the book. But I do believe that when it comes out, it will drop to a much more reasonable 4.3 or 4.4 within a month.
Expecting the drop is reasonable because it just makes sense. Like what you said.
Yeah. You just can't please everyone. These are people that picked it up based on a hook carousel that I did where they already knew what they were getting themselves into. Other people that pick it up just based on word of mouth, it might not be for them. I will get a 1-star review within the next month, and I have to prepare myself.
Yes, but before those 1-star comes, this is wild. Even besides the rating, if you push that aside, 370 reviews 9 days before a book comes out. Crazy. Like that's crazy in a great way. I'm so stoked for you because that's awesome. As a writer in the indie scene, how did you go about getting that word of mouth? Because the word of mouth is insane right now. So what did you do?
The crucial, how do you do this? How do I replicate this question? Yeah. Mixture of like hard work and luck, because it's always like luck a lot of the time. People like free books. So That also helps with ARC promotion. My aim was to get 800 people to sign up for an ARC, or just 800 people approved for an ARC, because I wanted it to have 200 ratings on release. And then I was making content. So I have 20,000 followers on TikTok, which is where most of people that read my books come from. And that has been built up. That's not a pre-existing audience. I had zero when I had 0 followers a year and a half ago. That's not like, this is like specifically author related content. But essentially, it's one video that hit the algorithm correctly. I got 80,000 views on it in 10 days. It was a photo carousel. So it was one picture of me saying, "Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm looking for ARC readers for this book that's coming out. Can I tell you about it?" And then 12 moody pictures, which each had like a snippet of a hook. So about 50 to 100 word hook that was split over 15 slides, and then said, "You can sign up in my bio." And that one, for some reason, I've made so many of those. I make like 4 of these a week, and most of the time they get less than 1,000 views. For some reason, that got 80,000 views, and it meant that 3,600 people signed up for an ARC, of which I accepted 3,200, of which 2,000 of those actually downloaded it. So only 2,000 of only 2/3 of the people that I got and who had specifically applied for it have actually downloaded it. So just useful numbers for people to know. And as at this point, I've obviously got 430 reviews, which is I think about 13 or 14% of that initial 3,200 number. So it's a numbers game. Mm-hmm. You need a lot of numbers to get a lot of numbers, and yeah, so 80,000, well now 97,000 on that video, but that was after it closed. 100,000, let's say, down to 430. If you went with like actual stats, it would be, yeah, you just got to throw so much content out there, and not be afraid to throw content out there. Try and post something a day on various different platforms. Do pay attention to what people that are successful in getting a lot of views are doing. Replicate it, just copy it. I hope it works for you. 1 in 20 videos or reels might take off, and yeah, that's all I can say really on the advice point.
Do you enjoy doing the videos? I know some people, when it comes to marketing or the promotion, that's the one thing where they're like, "Ah, man, I kind of just like the writing and creative side of things." Like I downloaded TikTok the other day and I'm petrified.
Yeah, I don't know. Do I enjoy it? I don't know. I don't know how to. Sometimes, yes. When videos do well, it makes me happy. I'm like, wow, okay, this has worked. I'm so successful. Look at me go. And then when I'm currently on a sort of like, this doesn't sound bad to a lot of people that like consistently get 200 views, which is still like a good amount of views because you're still getting it in front of 200 people. But like, I haven't had a video get more than like 3,000 views in a few weeks, and I've been posting every single day, and that can get a little bit like, I feel like I'm only speaking to the same group of people, and they already know that my book exists, and it's like the algorithm isn't helping me right now. So I have periods of time where I feel like I'm really enjoying it and I'm really on it with my content, and I feel like I understand how it works, and periods of time where I feel like I'm doing the same thing, getting no results. So depends.
Which is a great answer, because like everything, I guess it's really like a hit or miss type thing. Like when it's all working, it's like I could do this all day, and then after a couple,
it's the exact same with like writing and editing. When I hit a good flow and I'm getting a lot of words done, I'm like, wow, this is great. And then I have like 3 days where I'm like, I would rather do anything than write. So yeah.
Well, pivoting back into the book,
Yeah.
I did want to ask, because I think one of the biggest aspects that worked for this was the world building, where you find out, about the dragons and how they're bonded, and all the political aspects that go along with it. And like I already mentioned, I thought the characters were the strongest part of it. How did you walk that line of making the background and the world clear and kind of complicated but easy to understand, and also having such nuanced characters? because that can get messy, and this was not messy at all.
Yeah, it can get messy. I think maybe my only critical reviews are people that were a bit like, wow, this was kind of overwhelming,
Mm.
with the scale of what I was maybe trying to pull off with the world. Um, I think what helped it was the dual POV. So having Tanny's perception of the world and what she knows about the world and how she can express that to you in ways that don't feel like someone else just info dumping it onto you. So she can express how her awareness of, she's a scholar as well, so it's like things that she can have like scholarly conversations with other people without it seeming super like forced. So she has a certain awareness of the world, which is largely around like she understands certain cultural things and certain elements of history that maybe other characters wouldn't understand. And she has an interest in nature and like plants and various things. So she can express that to the reader without it sounding forced. And separately, Lang as a character is someone that's got a very different exposure. He's a king of a different realm. He understands like the interwoven politics of it all. And he has a dragon himself who's bonded to him, and he has a mental connection with that dragon. So I think having two people without, I think if I had like 10 people talking, it would absolutely make absolutely no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So two people with a nice level of, they both get to be nuanced, interesting characters, but they get to tell you different things about the world. That's my answer, I guess. Yeah.
And I thought that worked out well, like I said, because
Okay,
it,
good.
both sides kind of weaving back and forth. Um, I thought it was like very well done and fleshed out. It didn't feel confusing
Thank
to
you.
me, but if not making generalizations, but if someone came in expecting one thing and then all of a sudden it was a much more lore influence than they're used to,
Yeah.
I could see where that is like, what just happened here? Like,
Yes.
especially in certain genres, like it happened with me in epic fantasy a little bit, where it just, it all felt a little familiar,
Yeah.
where it was just like, I have to save my country because that's what I was born to do. So like when people
Yeah.
start reading something like that, or in this case, if it has like the romantasy tag in it, they're looking for the
Yeah.
little meter with the spice on the side, and
Yes.
are
I think
like, I
that's a
didn't sign
difficult
up
one
for
to manage from a marketing perspective, because obviously it really helps me to be able to market it as a romantasy, and I don't think that that is disingenuous, because I would say like there is enough of a romantic plot line, and
Mhm,
it's got an arc, and it's got like a beginning, middle, end to the romance, and it gets enough screen time that I think it deserves that tag. But there is a lot of romanticity which is 80% romance with a backdrop which feels like fantasy.
mhm,
It gives you the feeling of these people have powers and there's a fun world going on, but it doesn't push at that world. It doesn't like tug at any part of it. You don't necessarily like understand all the history, because that's, you're reading it for a romance, but you just like to have a flair.
mhm.
So this isn't what that is. This is like 70% fantasy, probably, I would say.
Which is why I think I loved it, as opposed to like what you just said, where it's just romance all the time, and then all of a sudden it's like, was that a dragon that flew by? And you're like, oh yeah,
Which is
yeah, it is a
fun, like
fantasy.
when you're in the mood for that kind of read. Like I absolutely won't bash on any romantasy ever,
No.
but this isn't maybe what has been recently classified as romantasy. This is maybe slightly it's romantic fantasy. That's what it is. It's just takes longer to say that on a TikTok video. So
um, kind of sticking with the romance theme a little bit. I thought also, one of the cool parts was that her friend at the Brotherhood, Seth, when he
yeah,
confesses to her, it wasn't, again, it didn't feel like it was going that very typical love triangle aspect of things, because
no, yeah.
you can start to see
Again,
that.
these are things where like initially when I set them up, I thought I would play more with them. Like it was going to be a lot steamier than it was. You've read it, you know how little steam is in this book. Um, that wasn't necessarily intentional. And I was maybe going to play more into the love triangle thing, but I think it just felt, again, it's like an inauthenticity thing of like, I like and I believe the fact that this person, that a lot of people might see and admire and like feel romantic feelings towards this main character, but I don't want it to be like, who am I going to choose? Like that was never what I wanted it to
Mhm.
become.
I
I
think
just
that
keep
was
getting
a
like I keep getting slayed by my own, like, it's working out for this one, but I think potentially some of my decisions of like, oh, but like the characters don't want me to do that decisions are maybe not popular. But yeah.
Yeah, but like I think it is going to end up working on the end because as just a regular, like a casual reader, when that happened and the way their relationship continued after their initial conversation, it was like, this
Yeah.
is real life. Like that's how real
Yeah.
life stuff goes. He doesn't go up again. I'm not doing any spoilers, but it didn't turn into like hair flip and I'm going to go brood in the corner. And, now
Yeah.
this is a resentment game going on or anything.
Yeah.
It was like, this is what happens in the real world. Um,
Yeah.
so I
I
thought
think
I
so
enjoyed
yeah,
that.
there was a book I read recently which was I think I can't even remember which one it was. There was a few that I read at the same time, so I'm just not going to name one. I'll just leave that for now. But it was essentially a situation where like there was a lot of background high stakes things going on, but pretty much every individual character relationship wasn't contentious. I think this is also a thing in a lot of like Studio Ghibli films. Like if I like mentioned like Princess Mononoke, which is like a film where there's a lot of like natural war thing going on. There's a lot of like evil and hate, and there's a lot of like high stakes going on in that. But the individual character dynamics and relationships are just really like nice and natural. And like I think with this one, I took a different turn to Amafire and was like, everyone doesn't have to hate each other. I don't
Mm.
have to turn people into caricatures. So I was just there's a lot more reasonable character interactions in this
Yes, which was
in
very
this in this
enjoyable.
book. Yeah.
As far as other characters go, Lang, like you said, is a prince of one of the other empires that is kind of closely affiliated with where Tani is. But
Yes.
they first meet when she has the ceremony. I forget the official name of it. When she finds out her fate.
Like the fate ceremony. It's
The
not
fate.
it's not got a fancy name. It's fine.
We'll
Yeah.
go with that. So they first meet with that, and it kind of starts off leaving a little bit of a breadcrumb story where they pass each other numerous times throughout the book, and she remembers him, but you never know if he does with her. And even in his POVs when he's talking, it's always like in the back of his mind, like, oh yeah, that girl from the contest.
Yeah.
That I felt came across. How did you go about making his plot lines advance the way that they did? Because he has much different concerns than her. While she's off, she ends up in the forest, running off with Shadow, a whole bunch of other stuff. But at no point when we leave her mind and are with him does the story slow down. So,
Yes.
what made that story come to be?
So yeah, like why did his story follow the trajectory it does? So okay, overall in terms of if you count the number of chapters, Lang does get like a lot less screen time
Mhm.
than Tanny does. He maybe gets a third, maybe less of the chapters. I think it's just timing. Like I tried to time his chapters with kind of lulls in Tanny's chapters. So when she was recovering from something, or when she was traveling. So there's a sequence when she's just where I'll cut to him because she's just about to go on. Her story is about to cut down the pacing. So it's actually it was a savior of the pacing in a way, because rather than me having to do like a travel log chapter, I could just be like, and then meanwhile, this
Yeah.
person was doing this. I think sometimes Lang's chapters are slightly slower paced, but I think the pace is kept high because you know what Tanny is trying to do whilst Lang is doing the slow thing, or
Mhm.
vice versa. Like if one of them thinks things are peaceful, usually the other one is actively acting to mess that up. So that like has the tension of like the dramatic irony in the reader's head of I know something you don't. I know that this is all about to come crumbling down because I know what the other character's doing. So I think that keeps the pacing up, even if they're not concurrently doing something interesting.
Which definitely worked out because I didn't, like we said before, it was kind of the slow burn story, but it felt like something was always going on that kept your interest.
Good.
Um,
That is good.
um, how did I know that again, dragons very big thing throughout history with fantasy,
Yeah.
but the way that they bonded and had the way that they were able to talk to each other kind of telepathically. Um,
Yes.
it's been seen a little bit recently, but how did you go about trying to get that done, but also keep it unique?
So I haven't read Fourth Wing, and so I actually don't know quite how unoriginal it is. As in, I know I know it's not an original concept. I'm totally aware of, like, I've read Aragon, and it's much more of like an Aragon dynamic in my head than it is like a supposed to be a Fourth Wing dynamic, and that's kind of like in the same way Chaithor and Lang's relationship is like she kind of like sasses him quite a lot. So it's probably slightly different to the Violet and Ten, I think. Anyway, I haven't read Fourth Wing, and I'm aware it's a thing in that. I don't know. I don't think I approached it. I think I just treated Chaithor as another character that could just only talk to him. So I wasn't really trying to treat it as like I'm gonna do dragon bonding in this fun way. I was just like, oh, I think it would be nice if she was a character of herself, because aren't actually that many female characters in this book,
Mhm.
which is which wasn't intentional. It just sort of happened because like Tanny lives in a brotherhood, an all male brotherhood, so that sort of happened. And then there's one person that she has a bond to in the second part, one of the Soundlanders, who was a woman. But like Chai to me became like a strong female character, even though she's a dragon. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I wasn't really seeking out to necessarily like replicate the hype of a fourth wing dragon bond thing. I like mental bond as a thing, and it works well with dragons. It's just like a nice idea. It's like a fantasy, right, that everyone has of like, wouldn't it be really cool if I had a dragon that could only speak to me?
Yeah, and it would be. And it's actually funny. I never kind of picked up on how few female characters there were there, and I think that's
Yeah,
why I like the dragon so much, because the only other well, I don't even want to say main, but a strong female character was a villain in there. Like, again, I'm trying
yes,
not to spoil
yeah,
anything, but it was very funny that it was like one of the main characters, the dragon, and then a
yeah,
villain. Or like the
yeah.
three
You sort
big
of have
voices.
like three villains, and one of them's one of the only women. Yes, yeah. I know, I agree. It's weird, but there's also Yvonne, but obviously she's only in it for like one part of the book. But
Mhm.
yeah, that was the thing that I kind of realized while editing. I was like, this I don't have that many women in this in this book, but I don't know. It's not some internalized misogyny, I promise. Like it was just an accidental thing.
Um, One of the other things I wanted to ask about, again, in the terms of keeping things unique, um,
Yes.
her fate. I mean, her power comes through touch. It's the
Yes.
senses that are able to kind of give the people their power in the Brotherhood. What made you want to go based off of the senses like that?
Yeah. Again, like similar to the Bond question, like this isn't a unique concept. Like there are obviously other fantasy worlds that are built around, or ideas built around the five senses. I think this was one of the first things in the world building notes app that I have, because that was my really professional thing. Was it started off as just 3 a.m. thoughts that I collated into a notes app, and now it's like a 5,000 word note on my phone, which I look at sometimes. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's where it all started. Um, but the idea of the main character having some sort of touch magic was one of the first things that I came up with for it. But rather than it wanting to be like a magic system necessarily, where it's like everyone from all of these lands just like has magical powers due with like conduct like to do with the senses. You do have that through the Brotherhood, but the individual lands, it's more that like their culture, like venerates and is sensitive to that sense. So I thought it'd be fun to have a world where like the sense can almost be a little bit of like a debuff. Um, so with the Soundlands, for example, they are like highly sensitive to sound, in that there's a number of them that have refused to live in any city whatsoever because it's too noisy, makes them go a bit crazy. They physically like only want to listen to like non-man-made sounds, it's like of nature. And I think it's more. So I thought it was fun to have something based on senses, but senses where they don't. It's not always necessarily like a crazy new trait they have. It's just something that they are that can cause like a stress in their lives. I don't know. I'm just playing with the senses, I suppose. Just what would a world look like? And I thought it would be interesting to have. I imagined in this kind of world, the sight and the scent land people might think that they were sort of like better or more intellectual because their things relied on like smelling something far away or like seeing something, whereas
Mhm.
they might view like touch magic or people that were sensitive to touch as being more primitive somehow, with like all of their society revolves around physical contact that feels unnatural, and like how all of the different like how that might interplay and create some strange politics between the states. That was a really convoluted answer. I'm very sorry.
No, it was a good answer though, at least. Like it's crazy that like that always just blows me away because it's so well thought out and like detailed, like the way that even there's just a notes app and you can go in and look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of where it started, and then you look at what became of it. I think is really
Yeah.
cool. So convoluted answers, I'm all about them. Um,
Okay. Cool. Good.
which led into my next question though, and I don't know if this is going to be a little spoilery. If it is, feel free to be like, wait and find out.
Sure.
But obviously, with the marriage fate that Tani has, the way that they could fully unlock their powers is by following the fate. So you know, hers may or may not be unlocked, but heading into the latter parts of the story, how is there? Are we going to find out how she is able to go about unlocking them and how to control those powers? Because a lot of the students there have mentors. They get shown how to do it. They continue education, and you know, she kind of is off on her own for a little bit by the time she's able to fully grasp her powers and grow them.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I'll try and answer it without being spoilery. Um, so as the point where it's sort of like left off and what you're aware of, there isn't like a real like natural mentor, because the other maybe brothers that are around her aren't able to help, maybe for various reasons. So there is a level of like uh her having to figure shit out by herself because she's not got that figure, and that comes with its flaws. Which yeah, so there's a level to her of her fearing her own power and maybe not using it, and maybe using it and using it badly, or not really understanding exactly how it works and having to test various different things before she actually works out how to use them.
Yeah, she almost has kind of like a scientist brain going on where it's like, I'm going to try and mess around with this and we'll see what the end result is. And
Mm,
towards the end of the book, there was some stuff that went on where it was like, oh no. Like I was
yeah.
reading it and it was just like, this can't be happening with 40 pages left. But one of the things that
Yeah.
I think is very unique and cool is that this is going to be a duology and not a trilogy. Um, what made you decide to only go 2 books instead of just chugging away and getting as much as you can out of it?
Um, it's a good question. I think I thought of the ending of book one and I thought of the ending of book two. I thought that's only 2 books, and it is, but both books are going to be quite long. This first draft for the second book, and like maybe I should have made it through, but there isn't like a natural point now. Like there still isn't a point where I would have like cut it any differently. So it's just 2 long books, but yeah, I mean, I could have sort of also I'm indie published. I didn't know whether I was going to get any response to this book. I didn't know how the response was going to go. I didn't want to commit to a 4 5. I've just finished a trilogy like last year, well, this year, and in May. I was nervous about opening up something that felt more open ended, and I knew like I could tell most of her story at least in 2 books, but yeah, it's partly like I don't really like the idea that like just because it's successful it needs to go on indefinitely. That feels like, and I didn't know if it was going to be successful at all.
Mhm,
Still, you know, jury's still out. It's going well so far, but like it hasn't come out yet.
mhm.
um and yeah, I felt like initially it was like I had 2 endpoints in my mind, and that still feels correct to me. I will say that I have thoughts of doing a different duology in the same world following different characters. But just because I like the world and I have a couple of ideas about like other characters that might be really interesting to follow. But yeah, I think 2 books. Well, it will be 2 books. It's just the second one's long.
And the second one again, what is the timeline looking out on that? Because I know a bunch of other people have been asking.
Yes, I'm hoping it's going to come out on the 5th of March. Worst case, 5th of April. The first draft, I have 2.5 chapters left to write of it. I want to finish it this week, but it keeps getting longer. So it just hit 130,000 words. For context, book 1 is 140, but it was 120, and then I added 20,000 words between the first draft and the one that came out. Because I'm an underwriter, I think that will happen again. So I think this one will likely be at the 160 mark. Which is just a lot more work and time to. It's obviously not like in the realm of fantasy. It's not crazy. There are a lot of people, even like in indie and trad, that put out much bigger books than that. But it's still going to take a significant amount of time to edit and get it to the level where I'm happy with people that have read the first book reading this one and agree that it's like as good quality. So yes, hopefully March the 5th, maybe April the 5th.
Perfect. So a nice announcement here. I'm going to be sure to broadcast that for everyone.
Exclusive.
That'll be my first TikTok post, and we'll see how I do on that.
Nice. Yep.
Question in the chat. Question for both of us. What's your book of the year so far? I figure we'd do one trad, one indie, because I feel like just picking one has got to be impossible at this point.
Sure. I haven't really read any like new releases, so it will be just books I've read this year. Okay, one indie. I'm gonna go with Sea of Souls by N.C. Scrimgeour. I don't actually know how to pronounce her surname, which sounds bad. Scrimgeour? I don't know. Anyway, it's great. It's like Pirates of the Caribbean meets One Dark Window, and there's Selkies, and it's like very dark and gothic. It's like One Dark Window-y vibes. Big fan. It's very good. Again, a one that I think like started out conceptually as being super romantasy and then became romantic fantasy, and it's good. I like it. And then my trad pick, I did finish. So I'm gonna say Cushiel Start. Have you heard of Cushiel Start?
No.
It's quite an old romantasy, and I'd say I almost DNF'd it. But then the second 2/3 of the book are like some of the best 2/3 of a book I've ever read. Very epic in scale, barely romantic. Like I think it's almost being done a disservice that people put it as a like romantasy pick sometimes. Like I've seen it in like fantasy romance subreddits being recommended, and that is just like a hugely complicated epic fantasy with the most ridiculous complex political systems you've ever read, but there just happens to be romance in it. So like anyway, it's very good, but it's also really complicated, and it took me a long time to get into, but I'll say that one.
Yeah, I think very good answer. I'm gonna have to check out the second one for sure. I think for trad publishing, it was A Pariah by Anthony Ryan. It was
okay, nice.
I read nothing but indie for like a year, maybe, with like one Jay Kristoff book in there, and then when I threw that in, it was like, oh yeah, like I forgot. You know, I've read a lot of great indie stuff. Everyone is really crushing it, which we're about to get into after this. But reading The Pariah in the middle of that was like, oh shit, nice. Like that's an actual kind of genius. And as far as indie stuff, there's so much. I literally just finished right before this Born in Fury, which was Moshe Winter. I just love that. And then I just finished his second book, which I guess is really the first of that series, which was The Winds of War. And I just finished that probably 20 minutes ago. And it was one of the ones I've enjoyed the most recently, where it was it gave me a visceral.
It's recency bias. You're coming off the high. I know you would have said mine had you not just finished it.
So. I thought that was a given.
Obviously, outside of mine, it's the one you finished 20 minutes ago. It's fine.
Yes, exactly. And I know in the chat, ZB is begging for.
It's more of like a book of the day, really. So it's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, he was obviously hoping for Whispers of the Storm, but you know.
Yeah, his was a distant third compared to yours and the one I finished 20 minutes ago, but it was good. But one of the coolest things I think about this scene going on now. I'm gonna again pivot to indie publishing because
Yeah,
I first discovered your work as a member of the Secret Scribes.
yeah.
Um, how did you become affiliated with that group? Because I know a lot of people in there. All of them are awesome. I've read probably like 70% of the stuff that you guys have put out,
Yeah,
and
that's crazy. You've done better than me. I've probably read about 30. So
yeah,
it's
but
really
you've
shocking.
written gold in the meantime. I'm just doing it and then
Yeah, but
starting next
like,
to like a crazy wall.
yeah, how did I become affiliated? Actually, my story of getting to the Secret Scribes is like slightly strange because I had a little bit of like a two-pronged attack in that it was obviously Dave Lawson that like started the Secret Scribes, but um he sort of did so in conjunction. Anyway, so I'll start with the like less complicated part first. So I was sort of internet friends with Ari Sanders for a decent amount of time for like a year before Secret Scribes kicked off. We like occasionally talk to each other on X. I hate calling it X, but yes, we talk to each other on there. So he already knew about me and that I was putting out book. Our debuts, or at least A Pocket of Lies, came out similar to his first one and his new series, Demon's Tier. So we were sort of talking like pre-release. And then separately, I used to have an active Fiverr account where I provided very cheap editing services, which is like I used to provide developmental edits for manuscripts. I don't do it anymore because I can't justify asking for professional prices, but I can't survive on. I literally used to do it for $10 a manuscript. I would provide 10 pages worth of feedback for 10. I don't, anyway, it's fine. Um, so I did that for Dave separately, like completely not knowing him from X or anything else. About, I don't know, this back in like February, if his book came out like later on that year. His book, I think, ended up coming out in August. I probably did this around February, March time. I provided an edit for him. And then a few months later, he came onto X and followed me. And I was like, oh, it's the guy I did the edit for. And then that's how that all came about. And he was like, oh, do you want to join this group? Rob said that he also knew you and vouched that you weren't crazy. And then I got in. So that's
That's
how it
funny.
went.
That's like a very small world how that happened. Um,
Yeah, it's weird.
yeah, but the one of the other reasons I'm bringing them up is because you guys, I'm saying they, the royal
Yes.
they,
Mm.
have an anthology coming out, Locks and Keys, and I was able to get an early copy of that.
Oh, nice.
I read most of it,
Nice.
but
That's impressive.
and yours was the jump off story first in there, and amazing,
Oh,
very big tonal shift from
oh,
what I
huge.
think
Yeah.
people would be expecting from you so far.
Yeah.
What made
True.
you want to go that route? Because I was reading that, loving it. Same great storytelling, great characters. Obviously, much shorter because you're trying to keep it. I think it was like 50,000 words or less, or so 20 or something like that.
Each one is like 8 to 9,000
Eight to
words.
yeah, 10, something
Yeah, up
like
to
that.
10.
10
I
was
think
pushing
10
it.
absolute maximum. I think the maximum might have been set up more like 8 or 9 actually, but anyway, yes, there were some people that were pushing the boundaries of how long the books could be, but it's okay. But yeah, really short. I think that one clocks in at like 7 or 8,000 words. It's very different. So for the people that are watching, the idea with that one is that it follows a woman. She's not at the end of her life, but she's definitely at the end of her tether. She's nominally in maybe her 50s, and she uh, is perceived by her local residents as being like just the witch that you come to get various different like tinctures and whatever. It's called a 3 knock problem, and the basis of that is that no one would knock 3 times on the door of a witch unless they really needed something. So she gets 3 knocks at her door, and it's from a member of the sort of king's guard. I don't even remember what I called them at this point. And they want her to come and deal with sort of a narcotics problem for a dragon. And it's really different in that she's a very jaded individual. But I think the reason that I chose that premise and that vibe to speak to is because it's not I do this with D&D as well, if we ever get onto hobbies at some point, but like
Mhm.
I pick characters for shorter campaigns that are a lot crazier because I can only sustain that voice for so long, because otherwise I will just end up thinking like them and going crazy. So I wouldn't be able to write a trilogy from the perspective of someone that's like quite that. She has a lot of dark ways of thinking about things and a lot of dark things that have happened in the past. And I do write books that air on darkness, but it's usually not maybe quite to the same tonal level and the coldness that she demonstrates towards people. So yeah, I think it's fun to be in the mind of someone like that for a very short period of time.
Yes, that is a great description of it, because she was like disconnected from reality. Like, you were reading
Yeah.
through her eyes of everything, kind of just like, this is sociopathic. But I think I read that right after finishing my book of the year, To Touch of Silent Fury, and it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow, these two stories back to back, just wildly different and equally enjoyed
Yes.
both of them that much. So I didn't know if there was. I guess you almost kind of answered it, but if there was another genre shift in what you're planning next. Obviously, not going to be sociopathic, which I'm happy for.
No,
Um,
not sociopathic. Yes, I would like to genre shift, but I'm also trying to just like understand the degree to which I'm going to do this. So my plan after I finish this first draft and I've got it to a point where it's in like its second draft and it's then in the back and forth of edits, is to start a fantasy rom-com, which would be like Hercules meets what was the other one? What's that film with Tom Cruise where he just dies on repeat? I
oh
forgot the
yeah,
name of it.
that was Day After Tomorrow.
No, not that one.
Um,
What's it called? It's got Emily Blunt in it. Anyway, I can
yeah,
just like
no, that's like
it's
Live, Die,
not Day After Tomorrow.
Repeat.
That's 2012 film. Um,
I,
anyway, that
I'm,
film. Someone in the chat will say it. That film. We can just say like Groundhog Day meets that. Anyway, so it's yeah. So I've got that idea, and that I think would be really fun and silly and a lot more playful. And then I also kind of want to write something that's more like horror fantasy. So I'm not
so
sure which path to go down.
two good
But
options, and it is
I
Edge
think
of
I need to palette
Tomorrow.
cleanse. Yeah, Edge of Tomorrow.
Mhm.
Yes,
I said
or
Day
was it
After
tomorrow?
Tomorrow, which is a
Yeah, you were
terrible
close. That's
2020
the
movie.
Jake Gyllenhaal one about where there's snow and
That
they're
made
in a
me wish the
library.
world was actually ending and not just
Yeah,
like,
I think I watched it in school many times. It's one of the few DVDs they had, and yeah,
that's a
good,
bad
good
movie.
times. Yeah,
Love Jake Gyllenhaal, but I'm just
yeah,
um
it's not a good film, but it's
no.
quite a guilty pleasure, I'd say.
That's kind of exactly right. Where yeah, it is really a guilty pleasure. Edge of Tomorrow was awesome though, so that's actually very cool
Yeah,
to hear that that's
really
an
fun.
influence on it.
Yeah,
Um,
no. So the premise of this like fancy rom-com would be it's called Sharon of the Sticks in my head. It's probably not actually going to be called that, but how the ferry master for over the River Styx was called like Charon or Sharon. It's a woman who drives a bus, and she is the woman that drives the bus of the underworld. And the idea is that she never sees the same person twice because she's always just ferrying people to the underworld. No one makes a return journey until one day someone comes onto her bus for a second time. She's like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like cursed that he has to die 50 times before he can undo his curse from the gods. And she's supposed to not help him do that. And it's kind of like their
I love
silly thing.
that.
So that's like an idea that I'd like to play with, but whether I
That's
finish it or
awesome,
even start it, we'll
and
see.
two very good mixes there, because Hercules the movie is amazing, very
Yeah,
underrated. Like, no one talks about it. Great
it's like
movie.
one of the best Disney films, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's fine. That's a good one. But pivoting into hobbies, which I was going to ask, you a movie
Sure.
person?
Oh yeah, I'm very much like a movie person, and then I'm a casual video gamer, and then like a bit of a D&D nerd. So like that's my that's my holy trinity, I suppose. But yes, I'm very much like a film person. I think I enjoy like I play scenes out in my head as I write them. But I think everyone does that. But yes,
Yeah, that's it works out well, because I feel like sometimes people don't do that and it comes off very disjointed. There's been a couple of books, yours, um, and one earlier that I was reading, The Clatterman, which is a like a horror story,
yeah,
and those two really stick of ones that I've read recently and where I was like watching it happen through
Mm,
the book. So it's funny that I talked to Janelle very early on in this little live stream, and she was a big movie person too. And
yeah,
I guess it's just funny the more that you take in other mediums is the way it can get projected in writing or the way that
yeah,
you work on like a D&D campaign. Because I've never played D&D. A lot of authors have, I know. And
yeah,
when when you mentioned it, and when I spoke to Michael R. Fletcher, he also said like a lot of my ideas come from D&D games that I just threw away. And
yeah.
it's just funny to see, like, I guess it kind of makes sense. You're writing a story to play, and then it just kind of comes out on the page instead.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. No, I think with films especially, well, when I write scenes, like my drafting method tends to be that I will write framing dialogue. So I will go through the scene and I will just write the dialogue. So then it's more natural that way because then like I'll feature in the O's and they're like and they're like wait what, and like they're imagining what people would actually say, and then I can put in all of like the details around it. But that's so I play it out in my head. I'm like, this person would say this person would say this, and like this is how they're like, this is the tone of voice, and then I can fill in the settings and stuff later. I think that's part of like the movie brain thing of like playing out the scene. um but yeah, D&D, I think it's interesting. I've never used anything from D&D, from anything that I've created into fantasy, because there hasn't really, into like my writing, because there hasn't been like a direct link to, so like the campaign that I wrote it wouldn't make any sense for me to try to write it as a book. It was weird. It was quite meta. Like it would be too confusing to try and put it into um, a thing. But it's all practice, and in the same way, like I started out writing fan fiction, but I also feel like D&D is a form of fan fiction. You're just like using your own characters rather than ones that exist in other universes.
And this popping that comment up because I think that is very interesting as well. Because I know a lot of people can sometimes have a problem writing the dialogue where it feels very inauthentic. And I guess that kind of goes back with what you said, where you'd rather the story be realistic than kind of
Yeah,
just forced. Um, so, what I guess continuing with that, what do you enjoy the most about writing dialogue? Like, does that come easily to you? And kind of
yeah,
it's much easier to do that and then branch off as opposed to kind of just filling it in afterwards.
yeah. The dialogue tends to flow very quickly. There are like, big emotional moments. I think I also can write quite well, like the big like sad bits where someone's like just like someone's internal monologue of like them crashing out about something. Those things, because one of them just feels like writing a diary in a way of the person, and the other one is just, oh, this thing and this thing and this thing. Like the grind of the writing is, for me, is like filling in, oh shit, they haven't eaten anything in 4 days, crap, and then like filling in all the setting and realizing they're in a completely empty room and like all of that. So yeah, it's all like the less fun things of yeah. I'm not the Tolkien person of like loving to write setting is just the place in which the story happens for me.
Yeah. There's it's funny when I mentioned in my review and I was like, oh yeah, I loved the prose, and you're like, me, it couldn't be. And then I saw Esme said the same thing, and she didn't get a me couldn't be. But
Oh, she
my
said other nice things and I wasn't distracted by you specifically pointing out the prose, but like I don't pride myself on having particularly nice prose.
well, these are two of the all-time best reviewers, ranked by no one except for everyone with
Yeah.
Esme because she's awesome.
Yes.
But my question, which I've asked a couple people so far, when you're writing things and it doesn't even have to be like a full scene, but sometimes lines. I kind of bookmarked a bunch of them as I was reading it. I'm not gonna do it because I don't enunciate well enough. I am an East Coast person in my 30s who sounds like I'm from California, so I
Mhm.
just won't
Mhm.
do it. But when you write things like that are especially meaningful or kind of profound or just sound good, do you realize as it was done that you did it? Or does it take maybe someone pointing
Yeah.
it out to you or you reading it back to be like, I just crushed that because I
So
just don't know.
yeah, no, this is an interesting one. Okay, if I went through the a lot of the things that people find quotable in my books are things I almost cut,
Wow.
which because I don't like my writing to like feel cliche, I am very like harsh. It's like killing the darlings thing. I'm harsh on anything that feels like it's quotable for the sake of being quotable. So there's a few, but like those are, but the ones I leave in are the ones that readers are like drawn to, and I think I can tell because like there's often like a little bit of a lull, or there's a moment and then someone just says something like big. And sometimes it's like it's rarely like something that's intermeshed within like a paragraph. It's usually like a statement of dialogue where someone says something and like, wow, okay, yeah, you made a statement there. Yeah, I often almost cut them because I'm worried that it feels too intentional. It's like the thing. So, but I have to leave in some. I have to leave in some like some things where I'm just like I'm just saying something that it's like sounds cool right now.
Mhm.
There's some that I just genuinely just actually really like. So I actually really like the conversation that so there's a conversation that Tani has with Lang at one point, and they're talking about and she asks him, like he asks her to like guess what his dad might say, and that spiel I like. And there's also a separate conversation about loyalty later on, which I feel like is like towing the line but doesn't quite cross it. And I'm like, this is fine. I'm okay with this. I think these lines are cool. But there's a couple of ones that people have like quoted that I'm like, oh, I'm glad I didn't cut that. I'm really glad that I didn't get too cringed out by my own sentences. It's often like the last sentence of a chapter that I'm like, is this overstating the point? But then people like it. So maybe
Mhm.
it's only overstating it for me when I've read the book 7 times.
Yeah, exactly. When you look back,
Yeah.
I'm sure it could be like, oh, this is a little heavy-handed. But as a first-time
Yeah.
reader, it's like, wow, that hit really hard. That's so funny to hear that because I definitely thought that. I had the loyalty one bookmarked, and I had another one which I'm not again. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it was about like the wishes, and I think
Yeah.
that line I had also. So um,
Yeah, that one I like. That one's fine. But yeah, there's just like a couple. I think the loyalty one and that one are fine. But yeah, there's like a couple of other ones that like people have quoted. I'm like, this so nearly didn't make it in. I was like, I've gone too far here. Like, but
yeah, I'm glad you
people like
liked
it, so it's fine.
those that I liked because that would have been very embarrassing if I was just like, I loved this, and you were like, yeah, that was fucking
That's my
cut.
least favorite one. No, those were never under threat. Those ones were fine. There were a couple of like more romantic lines that I think I nearly axed, but other people liked, so it's fine.
Perfect. That yeah, because like I said, I enjoyed that very much. And I know we said that the book is going to be coming out in March 5th, the latest April 5th. But along the way, can you give out your the socials where people can find you on TikTok, Instagram, that because you do some great stuff, whether it's the art giveaways, the behind the scenes type stuff. So I'm sure from now until then there will be constant updates of everything. So I just want to
Sure.
make sure people can follow you before signing
Yes.
off and everything. Where can everyone get to see you?
Yeah, I'm RA Sandpiper on most things. I think on TikTok I'm like, this is not helpful, but I'm like Oyster Rach on TikTok. I didn't make it thinking that I was actually going to have any kind of presence on there. But anyway, if you type in RA Sandpiper, you'd find me. Just like technically my at's really stupid, but it's fine. So yeah, if you want to just know about book updates, then Instagram is the place to be. If you want to find out about all of my finances and the amount of money I've made from everything ever, and me oversharing a lot of information about the process and like recommendations, that's more the content that I do on TikTok.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's cool. I like the behind the scenes and everything, so I'm sure other
Yeah,
people
I
will
do
as well.
monthly updates on how much money I've made since starting as an author on TikTok, which is interesting to a
That
lot of
is
people.
interesting.
It's
That's
not very
very
much.
open.
Yeah, it's very open. There's like one aspect of my finances I'm currently not allowed to talk about, which is like the specific amount I was given for my audiobook deal. But other
Mm,
than that, I can I can sort of combine that number with other things and then like tell people. So no,
Yeah,
I'm very open about money
Alpha
on there,
X.
but at some point it will like I won't be allowed to do that. But at that point, hopefully I'll be doing okay, so it's fine.
And when is the audiobook coming out? I don't even think I saw. I think I saw that actually, but never asked
So the
about it.
Amafire audiobooks, 1 and 2 are out, and the third one's supposed to come out in October. This one, To Touch Silent Fury, I don't currently have an audiobook listed for it. Depending on how it does, I might make it myself, but
Mm,
because I'm going to have to hire 2 narrators because it's dual POV,
mm.
it's just going to get really expensive really quickly. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, if you need anyone who's from New York and sounds like they're from California to fill in, I can do that.
I can't. That's not exactly what I was envisioning for Lang. Have you got any other accents you can throw in? Anything
No good
else?
ones. Not if you want
No
to
good
make
ones.
mine.
Well, technically it's fantasy, so you can just make one up. I think it's okay.
That's
Like
true.
he's not from any specific place, so maybe he is like sort of Californian New Yorker. That'll do.
Yeah, it's perfect. I'm finally alive in a dream world. But thank you very much for joining me.
Thank
I
you for
hope you have a
inviting me.
good
I like
rest.
how like it's gone from being like bright to completely dark in the
I was
in the
about to
space it's
say
been
that.
to.
That was like a mood
Yeah,
lighting that kicked in there because this
yeah.
was,
I think it turned 8 o'clock and my screen was like, "You need to have less bright
yeah,
light on your face."
time to wind down. Yeah, the
Hmm.
screen darkens and the line gets picked up. And it's like, I still have 4 hours of work. But thank you for joining and interspersing my day with something fun, and for everyone in the chat for joining as well. And I can't say enough about the book, and just wish you continued success on everything. I
Thank
think,
you. Thank you
yeah,
so much.
the trajectory is crazy. So I'm very excited to see where it goes. Fingers
Yes, me
crossed,
too.
knock on wood.
Yes, all of that. Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's been fun.
I'm glad to hear. And thank you, everyone in the chat, for joining for some good questions. And thank you, Casey, my sister in law, for some other good questions. And
Yep.
she's chomping at the bit for book 2. So as soon as we are done here, I'm going to text her and let her
Okay.
know, along with everyone
Give her the
else.
provisional dates. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm going to put a little asterisk, but we'll see. But yeah, thanks again.
No, of course. Goodbye.